Well, we got some snow here in Bozeman. That means road work like this just got a bit soggy. Find out what delays that could mean.
Last weekend's big snowstorm in northern Montana tore down trees and knocked out power lines, but Northwest Energy workers are upbeat. Coming up, find out why they aren't discouraged as they pick up those pieces.
Just ahead of 6:30 on this first day of October, Chet Lehman, Missy O'Malley with you. Matt has our forecast in a moment, but right now the weather is our top story this half hour. Snow and cold temperatures over the weekend threw a wrench into plans for road construction crews in the Bozeman area.
MTN's Cody Boyer visited some of those construction sites and explains what's going on now.
Bozeman city crews are still hard as well. You can look around. The snow itself is basically not here anymore, but they're still steadily at work down here on Cottonwood Road, as well as down the other way on Ferguson Road and the intersection of Durston, where they are actively turning that still into a roundabout. But this snow and, more importantly, the moisture that it's leaving behind, well, that's going to be causing some issues.
It primarily affects the paving operations that we have on our projects.
Along Cottonwood, what once was a temporary trench has now been refilled, forming what almost looks like a road again, just without the potholes. However, it's still dirt, and a bit of snow could keep it that way.
We can't pave streets unless it's 40 degrees and rising, and we also can't pave if we have precipitation falling.
Bozeman City Engineer Sean Coates says with things damp and freezing, the science that goes into building a road from scratch feels it first.
We can't have what are called frozen subgrade materials, basically frozen soils. We really are depending on things to warm up a little bit before we can pave our projects. And
when it comes to any delays, Coates says it all comes down to the pavement. If the top is slushy or wet, that pavement can't come down. But the hope is, according to Coates again, that they'll be able to catch up. But when you look at the size of the project, they're going to need all the time they can get.
We're crossing our fingers that the weather will hold through October.
But when it comes to progress, things are getting better, at least according to Bill Pratt, who still has a front row seat to Cottonwood's transformation.
They're working long hours, and I have to compliment them on that.
When I met Bill, there were other concerns, temporary water hoses, while city crews worked around other water mains. Those are gone.
They showed up, they were very congenial, and answered any questions. In fact, I think the guy apologized to me.
And he says dust mitigation is more under control too. As for the possibility of delays, Pratt's not worried about this either.
They're actually moving faster than what I expected, but it would still be interesting to hear from the city as to what their time frame is.
In Bozeman, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Now, Coates says that his crews are still trying to get routes opened through both the Ferguson and Cottonwood construction sites before winter is truly here. And as for those other projects, no specific date is set yet, but they are aiming for next spring. Again, the weather playing
Two seasons.
Yeah.
And
road construction?
And that one's almost over.
Temperatures this morning a little chilly, but the cloud cover going a long way early on today. Trying to keep the temperatures up a few degrees. Right around the freezing mark for most of the area, mainly dealing with patchy fog this morning, but you may have some fog to deal with, maybe some icy roadways for a few areas. Here's a look into the Bozeman region. Temperatures topping out around the 40-degree mark right now. Again, those temperatures holding into the 20s. Feels like it's in the 20s with that calm wind. We'll talk more about what you can expect this week in just a few minutes.
It feels like it's January.
Yes, it
does.
does.
Even though it's October 1st.
Yes, it does. Happy New Year.
Thank you for that. Happy New Year. 6:33 here on your Tuesday. Now, a record-setting winter storm swept across the High Line of Montana this past weekend.
That led Northwestern Energy to respond to more than 300 service calls and hundreds of power outages.
New this morning, MTN's Lindsay Hyatt went out with some crews to get a look at what damage from that storm looked like.
In just 36 hours, the first snow had brought trees and power lines down all over town.
This was heavy, wet snow. The leaves were still out on the trees. That's a formula for lots of power outages and lots of hours worked.
And they're not done yet.
We're down to just very few cases of the power being out. We've got lots of cleanup ahead of us from lines that were torn down.
So early, worse was to be expected.
Well, the weather forecast was ominous and had all the potential for a very destructive event.
So they went into planning and preparedness mode.
We brought personnel in and equipment in that we thought we might need in the event of a worst case scenario.
But the storm took a turn for the best.
We really dodged a bullet with this storm.
Lineman Travis Kakalesic had geared up for much worse.
It's a lot less than most of us expected to see. Our system fared very well compared to what we were prepared for.
Although damages were much less than expected, crew members like Kakalesic worked from 7 a.m. to midnight all weekend long.
Lots of people need help right now, and we're able to give it to them, and that's a good feeling.
Their goal is to help the most people in the shortest amount of time.
How can we get the most people back in power, back in service as quickly as possible?
While there's still work to be done, Northwestern Energy says they wouldn't have done anything different.
In hindsight, we would do this just like we did it this time.
Because it's best to be prepared.
We would rather be safe than sorry.
When the next storm comes, they'll have crews on deck and a plan in place. In Great Falls, Lindsay Hyatt, MTN News.
In other news here on your Tuesday morning, a 48-year-old man is recovering from severe burns after falling into thermal water near the cone of Old Faithful Geyser.
Yeah, this happened Sunday night around midnight. Cade Edmund Seamers told park rangers he was walking along the boardwalk without a flashlight, tripped and fell into a hot spring. He was flown to a hospital in Idaho Falls. Park officials say there was evidence of alcohol use. They also found Seamer's shoes, his hat, and footprints going to and from the geyser. An investigation into that situation is ongoing.
And last week, the Campaign for Accountability called on the IRS to investigate a Gallatin Gateway-based nonprofit, claiming that the organization failed to report its lobbying activity.
Citizens for Balanced Use, an advocacy group that promotes greater motorized access to public lands and more resource development in Montana. Montana, D.C.-based watchdog organization says Citizens for Balanced Use willfully violated the rules for maintaining a nonprofit tax-exempt status by running an extensive lobbying campaign and failing to disclose its activity.
Well, according to the complaint, they claim that all of our members and board members and people are up, advocating for certain issues between our congressionals, state elected officials, agencies. And I just remind the people that none of our board members and members are being paid.
Now, the original complaint about Citizens for Balanced Use's lobbying practices came from Montana-based conservation group called the Western Values Project.
And after more than a decade of serving customers in Bozeman, a historic icon is officially closing its doors at the end of the month.
But not before going out with a bang. The Emerson Grills owner announced this week that after nearly 15 years spent inside one of Bozeman downtown's most historic buildings, the restaurant has been sold to new owners.
The business is well known for its catering, its award-winning service, and Italian food and wine selection. The owner says next up, a craft pizza restaurant, which will also take Emerson's Grill gift cards. The Grill's last day is October 31st. Robin, you have done such a great job.
It's ours. The employees have made it happen. And I'm just eternally grateful for this opportunity and tend to have made such close friends with my customers and the employees both.
Absolutely, one of my favorite spots. There is much more to the restaurant's story, and this Saturday, MTN's Cody Boyer will take a closer look at the business's history and tell us what's next for the owner, Robin, and her staff.
15 years. That's hard to believe.
So amazing. Yeah. So many delicious things.
Yep.
It is time for a quick break. In a moment,